Writing a state complaint. Information for families and professionals. So we usually start with the mission of the PEAL Center, which is to educate and empower families to ensure that children, youth, and young adults with disabilities and special healthcare needs lead rich, active lives as full members of their schools and communities. Heather, do we know about the poll, or will we skip that today?
I don't know about the poll.
Okay, let's move on.
Sorry about that.
No, not at all. Objectives for today are going to include describing the laws protecting the rights of families to resolve disputes involving IEP implementation at school. List the purposes of a state complaint. Describes the steps you need to take to file a state complaint. Learn about some of Pennsylvania's statistics regarding state complaints. And list resources available to help you file a state complaint. Now, what does IDEA say about state complaints? So anytime that we refer to state education agency, that's the Pennsylvania Department of Ed. Most times when we're talking about disability and the PA Department of Ed, we're talking about the Bureau of Special Education. So the Department of Ed has to have a system in place for a parent, an advocate, sometimes an attorney or someone else to file a compliance complaint. The Pennsylvania Department of Ed is mandated then to let families know how to file a complaint and where to find the forms needed. It might be surprising to know that, you don't need a form, but the form ensures that parents have all the necessary information needed to file a complaint. If an investigation finds that a complaint is valid, a corrective action is made. And oftentimes this does include compensatory education. And we'll learn more about this later in the session. Another interesting result of a complaint being filed is that school has to remedy the situation for any student who may be affected by this issue. We call those students who are similarly situated. So before you start thinking about filing a complaint, and some of these things you may already have done, and then when you do them, you're like, I need to file a complaint. But with all next steps, you want to make sure that everyone who has decision-making power in the school has had some input or been able to help you resolve the issue. So make sure that your team has met and make sure they've met over the issue. You don't have to, just because you're having an IEP meeting doesn't mean that you have to, go over the entire IEP. You might just be going over the specific section where there's an issue. It's not really our job to make sure that all relevant parties are present at the IEP meeting, but if for some reason someone can't be there, then, you can disagree that to have the meeting at that time until all parties can be there. And if you haven't seen it before, you might want to take a look at the strategies that are outlined in the PEAL Center's document, Communication Tips for Building Strong Partnerships. Besides giving you some ideas to make communication better and easier for the IEP team, there's also a list that's kind of a reminder, but also kind of, a guide in going up that chain of command and making sure that you've talked to the right people. That is important when there are issues of non-compliance. So Heather's going to put that in the chat so you have that. And then as a follow-up, anyone who registered is going to get a follow-up.
Oh, because I connected it.
Oh, maybe that's why.
How do you disconnect?
Okay. I think someone needs to needs muted there. So why would someone want to file a state complaint? They are part of our procedural safeguards. They are part of the rights that we have as families to resolve issues. Now, in Pennsylvania, state complaints are investigated and followed up on by the Department of Education. Other states might do it another way, but in Pennsylvania, it's not the Office of Dispute Resolution that investigates a state complaint, but it is the special education advisor from the Bureau of Special Education. And they're in place to ensure that families have a way to resolve a procedural dispute with the school. Now, the difference here is, procedural disputes usually have to do with when the law is not being followed, there's non-compliance. They're not following what the law says. And that's whether it's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, whether it's the Section 504 or Chapter 14, which is special education in PA. Any of these things where there's non-compliance, where the school's not doing what the laws say they should be doing, you can file a complaint. And yes, that also has to do with 504 plans. State complaints can be a different way to resolve issues rather than mediation, which is, a process, and due process, which of course, you're talking about hiring a lawyer, a formal hearing. It's a lot of work and a lot of stress. So this is a way that we can effectively resolve an issue with minimal time, no cost. In resolution in a complaint, which is something that you as the parent filing the complaint can decide what do you think would be the best idea for a resolution. And it can include compensatory education, make up education for what was lost when the school was out of compliance. And there are different ways to figure that out. But, if you don't know how to figure it out, that's fine. You can put that you want compensatory education. You can call a PEAL center. We can help you figure out, what would be appropriate. You make the final decision, but just, how we might get to that point. Just the more information that you would provide to PDE for that, making that decision would be better in the long run. So
There's a question in the chat.
uh-huh.
So you can file a state complaint if they aren't fulfilling FAPE or you believe in denial of FAPE.
Well, that's where we're at right now. So let's hope, we can answer their question. So you file a state complaint when it's a procedural issue, meaning they haven't followed the law. You have to look to mediation or due process when we're talking about appropriateness of services. And that's more of a gray area. So let's say for a state complaint, and there's going to be a lot of examples here. There's one right here. The OT goes on maternity leave and there's no one to provide services. In this case, the IEP states that the child should be getting whatever the IEP team has decided on as far as OT. And if that person's gone and the school doesn't have anyone to provide those services to a student, then this is procedural. It's already in the IEP. The IEP is not being followed because, if they don't have someone to take that OT's place, then they're not going to be providing services. A school must provide the services that are in an IEP. So in this case, we would be talking about a state complaint. And again, for the resolution, we'd be talking about compensatory services. Anything the student missed, we would request that the comp ed includes whatever the child missed. Now, in mediation or due process, these two are going to be chosen when there's a dispute about the appropriateness of services. If there's disagreement about what's being provided. So if a parent says, well, my child needs three 1-hour sessions of speech a week, and the school district says, we have data that shows that the child doesn't need that much, then you're going to be talking about appropriateness, which is a little more of a gray area. And for that, those disputes are handled through a mediation or due process. And that's provided by ODR, Office of Dispute Resolution. They have mediators, trained mediators, no bias in the mediators. That's why, ODR is an independent entity. So they are not connected with the school. They are not biased towards the school or towards the family. The mediators that they provide, all of their bios are on the ODR website. That's odr-pa.org. You can learn about all of them. And same with, due process. The hearing officers, all of their bios are online. But they're, those are some more intense dispute resolution processes. But that's the difference between a procedural issue and, at the PEAL Center, we are not attorneys, but this is more mediation or disputes about appropriateness are substantive issues. This is, often when we talk about filing complaints, and just the name alone, filing a complaint, it conjures up ideas of, oh, is somebody going to try and get back at me? When we think of a state complaint and the purpose of a state complaint, it is a way to improve programming in the school. It is not adversarial, but just from experience, if there is a procedural issue that's happening with you, evaluation reports are late, services not being provided, then it's likely happening to other students in the school. So it's a way to improve that programming. It's not adversarial. It's not tattling on the school. It's saying, schools are monitored by the state every 6 years. If they don't want something to show up on that, they're going to, want to know, what are we not following? What are we not doing right? So IDEA has it right in there that parents do have the right to file a state complaint and have it investigated. Section 504 of the Rehab Act also provides protection against retaliation. Any individual, disabled or not, is protected from retaliation for exercising his or her rights. So if you have an issue with filing a complaint, you fear retaliation for whatever reason, if you file or contact the Office of Civil Rights and just ask them to open a file on your complaint, they will keep track of this and just do this to help ensure that there's no retaliation, or that you have proof that you filed a complaint. This is well within your rights, and that you have a certain fear for retaliation. It might also be noted that an advocate can file a complaint on behalf of a student. If the advocate may become aware or know of non-compliance, they can go ahead and file a complaint on behalf of the student. I wouldn't do it, without talking to the family about it or getting something done. I think this is also effective if there's a systemic complaint. Let's say there's a school district who is having all children who ride specialized transportation and who have transportation in their IEPs leave the building 20 minutes early. Well, the law says you can't do that, and it's happening to multiple students. So if an advocate were to become aware of this, and an advocate, that could be anybody. That can be, somebody who's aware of the issue. They don't have to, have the official term advocate. Advocate's anybody that's speaks on behalf of another individual, right? So anybody can file the complaint on behalf of the student. So these are some other examples of filing a state complaint. And again, we're talking about things where the law itself is not being followed. We're not talking about appropriateness, because that would be remedied with mediation or due process. So some examples here: if the school doesn't provide something that's already in the IEP or 504, then there's reason then to file a state complaint. Related services that are supposed to be provided to the student and are not provided, state complaint. Let's say that a parent writes to a school, because we always suggest keeping everything in writing, that the parent asks for a meeting and the school doesn't follow up. There's another reason for a state complaint. Here's the example we just gave. A child with an IEP is let out of school earlier than other students. They're entitled to the same amount of time as any other student, full instructional day. So that's another reason to file a complaint. And like I said, so many of these things, you'll find that, if it's happening to your child, it's probably happening to other children too. And I think we mentioned this before, the school takes longer than the 60 calendar days to complete an evaluation or reevaluation. It's expected that in Pennsylvania, 60 calendar days is what we look at as far as an evaluation report being in the parent's hands. And if that's not the case, then a parent can file for a state complaint. So here's some reminders about, specific to state complaints. And that is, I'll take you to the link in a minute and show you the complaint. The form has to be printed, completed, and signed. And this is because PDE needs the original signature from on the form. So right now, we don't have the capacity to fill this out electronically and submit it. So yeah, you're gonna have to use snail mail to get it there. They want the original with the signatures. And at the same time that you send it to the Department of Ed, you have to send a copy to the school. So I think, well, why do I have to send a copy to the school? We are trying to give them a last chance to go ahead and fix the issue. And you're just notifying them of things they should know already. In case they don't, this is, kind of the heads up that, yeah, this is happening, and you're filing a complaint with the Pennsylvania Department of Ed. You don't have to file, there's some paperwork that you're going to need to show, evidence of what's happened. So you don't need to file that evidence. The school should already have that, whether it's a copy of the IEP, a copy of emails back and forth between you and the school. They should have all those things. So you just need to file the complaint itself and send that to the school. That one doesn't have to be the original. State complaints have to be filed within 1 year from the date of the non-compliance. So whereas with the due process, you have 2 years that you can go back, state complaints have to be filed within a year of the non-compliance. Okay. So what do? The parent or the advocate prints out the state complaint form. You complete the form. Again, there's 3 questions. The first question is, tell us what happened. Tell us in your words what happened. At this point, I would suggest leaving out emotion. We've talked about that before. You just want the facts. What happened? The second question is, give us evidence of what happened. Like I said, this is copies of the IEP, copies of emails that might have gone back and forth. It might be sections of the law that refer to what the issue is. That's helpful for the investigator. So that's question number 2. And the third The third statement to complete is, what's your idea for a resolution? So we'll go over some of those. Again, a copy of the form is sent to the Pennsylvania Department of Ed in Harrisburg. That's all on the form. And one is sent to the school, usually to the building principal or special education director, superintendent, some administrator at the school. Next, the Pennsylvania Department of Ed will contact the person who filed the complaint to discuss the issue. I've found that usually you'll get a pretty timely call from that person as they start their investigation. Now they have 60 days to complete the investigation, but that initial call will, they might ask, some clarifying questions they need to know from the complaint that you filed. They might want to review the people that you've suggested that they interview to talk to about the complaint. The investigator then has that 60 calendar days to file to investigate the complaint. And then they will issue their findings on a report. If it goes to the way that, they have indeed found non-compliance, then they'll issue a corrective action. It's expected that that corrective action will be completed by the school. If you find that the complaint comes back and it's not founded, they didn't find any areas of non-compliance, they'll give you 10 days. Now, I would give a heads up, it's 10 days from the date they mail it. I know it's confusing, but it's 10 days from the date that they mail it that you have to respond if you have new or other information. So there is that opportunity. So the form itself, you have your contact information you're going to fill out, the student's the student's information about the school, those interviewees, the 3 questions we just discussed, and your original signature. So here we go, a little more in depth. Question 1, description of the nature of the problem. Basically, what happened? An idea is to complete this section as if you were describing it to a stranger. And again, don't include emotion. I know you're upset about this. And it's really upsetting to see your child not getting what he needs or what he's entitled to. But the emotion, it's going to be, it's not going to be part of the decision making. So try and leave that part out. Describe the non-compliance as best you can. It doesn't have to be lengthy, but, because you are going to get interviewed by the investigator. So that person is going to call you to clarify things. So it doesn't have to be lengthy. And I found that the special education advisors that are doing the investigating for the complaints are usually, pretty understanding as far as, if you put in something that is the issue, they're going to do their best to talk to you and figure out exactly what happened, exactly what went on. Question 2 is the facts. Again, a copy of the IEP or other documents that you have, other related documents like emails or sticky notes, copies of those. What is helpful, I think, to the investigator is if you can identify, and again, PEAL can help you with this, our family resource specialist have a pretty good idea of where to find certain parts of the law in IDEA or in Chapter 14, or again, ADA or Section 504 that refer to the non-compliance. And usually including part of that kind of saves the investigator a step in you providing that information. And they know, it's very clear to them then what you're looking at as far as non-compliance, where the district did not provide what they should have provided for the student. your ideas for a resolution. Again, we talked a lot about compensatory education. And most times that's what we want to see. We want to see that the student gets what they were entitled to. So when we use our situation or example from before, where the whoever's providing the service has to take a sick leave or medical leave, and the school didn't have a substitute in place and the service wasn't provided, then you can have this hour by hour remedy. Whereas if the child didn't get 8 sessions, 1 hour each, then the parent requests 8 hours of compensatory education. And then there's an agreement between the school and the parent. When is that going to be provided? So, whether it happens before or after school, whether it happens, in the summer, or, it's an agreement that you can make. It doesn't have to be, at a time that is determined by anyone. It's what works for the student. And the parent, being an equal partner on the IEP team, can work with the school to decide how that's going to occur. Another resolution that I like to include is that, when you talk about what's supposed to be provided in the law, there are folks at the district who should know very clearly what should be provided according to what the law says. If that's not happening, I want them to know that. I want them to learn that. So usually I'll include in a resolution that I want training, not just by the staff, but there is someone at the top that's responsible for ensuring that staff knows the aspects of the law. So I want administrators to get that training too, so that they realize, that this is important. This has to do with the child's free, appropriate public education. And yes, they do need training. If it didn't happen, I want them to know how important it is that they understand the scope of the law, that they do have to provide this. So I'll include trainings. School didn't agree to an IEP meeting when it was requested by a parent. That's basic special education, right? So we want to ensure that the school knows how important that is. Okay. And that could be your suggestion. And there is a part of the IEP called supports for school personnel. So, thinking about what kind of support or training do they need? Who's going to provide that training? Again, decisions that can be made either by the investigator, or if there's no direction from the investigator, the team can think about how that's going to happen. What happens next? Again, if the complaint was found to be valid, investigator will issue a corrective action. And they'll also issue the timeline that corrective action has to be completed by. And there is follow-up by the Pennsylvania Department of Ed. Honestly, there was an issue in a certain very large school district in Pennsylvania that wasn't following up, and they had, there was investigation into that because there was no follow-up from PDE. So they do follow up. If the complaint was found to be unfounded, the complainant will get a letter from the Department of Education letting them know what was missing, why it was found to be in compliance, or that they couldn't find non-compliance. And again, told that they have 10 days to produce any new or additional information to the department to reconsider the result of the complaint. And at that point, it's considered resolved and closed. So just in summary, it's not a difficult process to resolve procedural issues of non-compliance. So procedure meaning they didn't follow the law. There's no cost in filing a state complaint. There's, cost for the stamp to get it out there. If you are someone who's willing to file a complaint, it is truly unlikely that you would be a target for retaliation. They know that you know where to go. You know that retaliation is against the law. It's not often that a parent who files for either a complaint or even a due process for retaliation to occur just because, you do know what your rights are. There's, why would they target someone who's ready to stand up and, basically fight for their rights? So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because, for personal experience, I know it happens. But I would be hard pressed not to file a complaint just because I have this idea that that might happen. It doesn't happen often because, again, it is against the law. It's hard to prove, but that's why, if you do have that feeling, you can follow up with the Office of Civil Rights. Just ask them to file your complaint. You want to open a file. You want them to file your complaint because you fear retaliation. Resolution often is compensatory education, make-up education for what was lost. And again, a state complaint could resolve issues of noncompliance for any child under similar circumstances within the district. So it is a systemic remedy. Now, before I get to co-resolution, I want to show you what compliance packet looks like. So it does come with instruction. It's a little letter from special education. It tells you the part of the law that says you have the right to file a complaint. Complaints aren't scary, honestly, they are not scary. In my son's education career, I did have to file 3 complaints. Myself never experienced retaliation, but, did get more engagement from the school as far as wanting to remedy the issue. This explains that there can be a third party that files. These are important things to remember, things like sharing a copy with the school, providing an original signature, and you are to receive a copy of procedural safeguards when you file a complaint for the first time in a school year. So here's the actual form. They ask you how you want to be contacted by PDE. Provide your contact information about the child, where the child's in school, information if you're filing on behalf of a homeless child, ensuring that the violation occurred within the past year. Here's the list of folks that you want interviewed for the issues. So, you can put your name. If you have, if an advocate or someone else is attending meetings with you, you might want to put that person. You might want to put the teacher's name, special education director's name, other folks that you would want to be part of the interview, or you'd want PDE to contact. Here's where it asks about the statements. First one, provide a statement about the violation or issue which you believe occurred. Again, no emotion. Try and leave that out of there. It's tough, I know. List facts that support your statement. Now, of course, if you download this and you're filling it out, you have a lot more space than this. But in listing the facts, sometimes I'll put it like in bullet form, or, just use it that way so I keep myself organized. But be sure to include, maybe what the IEP said as far as what was going to be offered, or what the, IEP team decided was appropriate for the student. And, teacher as of this date, the teacher was not in the school, was absent from the school, student did not receive services from this date to this date, things like that. And I do like to include the parts of the law that are relevant to the complaint. It's, it just helps out. It does help the investigator. But I also think it supports strongly what you're trying to show is non-compliance. And to the best of your knowledge, please suggest a solution to the problem. So besides, additional training for staff and administration and compensatory education, there could be other things that are provided. Maybe you believe that a policy has to be written by the school. Suggest that they write a policy addressing the issue. Whatever your ideas for a solution are, it's a possibility it could be enacted. So you can do that. This is where they need your signature and the date, and it tells you here where to file that. For folks that have been around a while, please note that the Department of Education has moved from in Harrisburg. They're not on Market Street anymore. This is their new address. So this is a new address for the Department of Ed. Now you see here it says, I think it's funny that it's called this. CRP is the call resolution process. Cindy, what's the call resolution process? Well, why am I back here? Let's get back to where we were. We're getting there. Call resolution process. Again, this is for issues of non-compliance. Now let's say, okay, we know that a complaint is going to take 60 days. Call resolution process could be almost immediate. So it begins with a call to the consult line. You can talk with the folks there, tell them what your issue is. Now, usually they're the ones to make the decision about or offer call resolution process. But if you're aware of it, you may say, can you do a call resolution process on this case? And maybe, especially if it's something easy, like let's say the school, you sent an email asking for a meeting. You gave the school 3 dates that you were good with. You haven't heard back from them and you need to have a meeting. So you don't hear from the school. Let's say it's been 2 weeks. You call consult line and ask for a co-resolution process because you made this request for a meeting, has been 2 weeks, you haven't heard from them. And the consult line staff will say, okay, let's just have co-resolution process. So what happens now is they will come up with an email. They'll get your okay on the email. The email will not go out unless you say, okay, that sounds good, or can you add this? They will send the email from ODR to the special education director and the Pennsylvania Department of Ed special education advisor. The advisor is the person in charge of compliance. So they're getting notification that there's an issue of non-compliance. And if the special education director, that's why you want to go to the special education director before you might want to go through the CRP or filing a complaint, because a lot of times they don't know what's going on. So if you've already taken that route, that's fine. Go ahead, file your complaint, request the CRP. And then the school hopefully what happens is the school special education director and the special education advisor will decide how to follow up. So in our example of the school not setting up an IEP meeting, hopefully all that's going to happen is once they get this email, they realize, oh my gosh, we need to set up a meeting for this family. And it happens. So like I said, this is a lot quicker than waiting for the complaint. And it does get the issue done, but if there's a bigger issue or, sometimes with the complaint, the part of the reason that you send a complaint to the school, in addition to sending it to PDE is to hopefully push the district into resolving the issue as soon as possible. Oftentimes, even if the school would do that, and this is just me, I would want it on the books that there was non-compliance on the part of the school. So I would let it go through. It'll come back that it was resolved, but it's still all on record that it happened. Okay, that's just, parent choice. So here's some contact information for the PEAL Center. Feel free to contact us anytime. The ODR consult line, or you can email them. If you aren't aware of this PDE email, the RA, I always call it the RA email. This RA email goes, I'll let you in on a little secret, goes directly to the Department of Education Bureau Advisor. So they review it, and it's helpful for that person to know what's going on. That's why she wants to see it. So feel free to use that for other issues, even if they're non-compliance, if they're issues that you have, questions you have, use that RA account. You can use it for a lot more than just non-compliance. You have questions, you notice something going on in school, you have a question about it, use the RA account. And then there's contact there for the special education advisors. Another little hint, sometimes PD doesn't keep up on that. So, use the contact information. If you find that the advisor isn't the advisor in place anymore, hopefully whoever answers the phone is going to be able to get you that information. But if not, give us a call here and we'll try and find that info for you. More resources. There's a Q&A for dispute resolution processes from Cadre. If you haven't been on the Cadre website before, cadreworks.org, take a look. They have some fantastic information all around dispute resolution, all around communication with your school. It's a national project, so it's not specific to PA, but it has lots of helpful information. And the link under that, the PDE complaint procedures, again, you'll get instructions, you'll get the form you need to use, you'll get all the contact information you need. You can get to the complaint documents through ODR. So if you're on the ODR website, you can get there through the ODR website. It's just more direct if you go through the PDE website. And there's the information for the Office of Civil Rights. They have online complaints, so you can use them to file online complaints. Or again, if you wanted to have them open a file because you fear retaliation. And as usual, you have more questions, you know where to find us. Contact the PEAL Center, talk to a family resource specialist.